I wanted to talk today about reseeding because I don't care how long you've been doing this, it's going to happen to you that sometimes when you start herbs or you start, flowers, whatever, some of them aren't going to take. That's why people tend to do like, these massive cell things that have like, 50 different little seedlings in there. Sometimes some of them will go, sometimes some of them won't. And you take the best ones and you get rid of the others. That's also the reason I think that I go with the philosophy of doing more seeds than I need and then just cutting back. So if I take a little planter, even one that's just like this big, that's maybe just a 3-inch size planter for my starter, or just as to grow stuff in, I may add 20 to 30 40 seeds even in there to make sure something will take off, and then I just cut everything else back. Like I have one of my red Reuben basils up front that's looking great, but it's got a couple of big ones and a couple really small ones, so I'm just taking those small ones and I'm cutting them out and not keeping them. Same thing with my sage that's outside. It's got some really big ones and some small ones, and it's really best just to be like, okay, be merciless and cut out the small ones and let the big ones grow. And then with the big ones, you need to keep harvesting them to make sure that they keep growing as well. So it's all part of the process. But the main the thing I want to talk about, like I said, is how long do you wait? And that's why I asked the poll. If you haven't answered the poll in the chat yet, please do. That's if you're getting here live, which if you are, woo! Hey, GLG, good to see you. But yeah, we already got someone saying 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks is a pretty good range. I do go up to four weeks, just to be safe sometimes, especially if the conditions have been extra cold. So that's what happened here in the UK. I planted when it was pretty warm at the beginning of April, and then for most of the rest of April into the beginning of May, it got pretty darn cold again. And that's why a lot of the ones, especially outside, didn't grow. Even some of the ones I planted that I brought in inside didn't grow very well either. But it's not to say all of them. I have some of them that have taken off and done just fine. And then it's also, I just tend to like be brave with some of mine, which I think is perfectly fine. You plant a whole bunch, and I say better to be brave and plant extra and have some of them fail and just use more seeds. Seeds aren't that expensive in the long term of things. I mean, a seed pack of, say, like peppermint or something can give you like 2,000 seeds for maybe $2. That's, if you're only using, a small portion of those seeds, that's not a big deal, right? Some other seeds are more expensive, like when you get into the rosemaries and the sages, sometimes you'll only get like, maybe 20 seeds for £3. I'm not sure what it is in dollars anymore. Might be about the same. If you guys are in the US, you could let me know in the comments. But yeah, the temperature and the amount of sun definitely affects it. But if you're going to say, okay, nothing has happened, do I keep waiting? I think 3 to 4 weeks is a fair time, because yes, if the conditions are ideal and everything is working perfectly, you may see growth in the first week to the first 2 weeks. There are some herbs that do take a little bit longer though. So that's why I say 3 to 4 weeks is probably the best time. Up to 5 weeks if you want to be really sure. But anything more than that, I think is, overkill. Like I said, it's just as well to reseed. I have a cinnamon basil that I planted that's in my front window, and it got one seedling popping up. And so what I did with that is that one seedling I'm going to leave growing, but then I put a couple extra seeds in there to hopefully grow a couple extra stalks in that same planter, because the other ones didn't take off. So yeah, don't be afraid to add in more. And don't be afraid to just be brave and go for it, man. Just go for it. Just go out there, load those things up with some seeds, and then be more willing to cut back than to not be brave and say, okay, I'm only going to put a couple seeds in here. And I think that is a greater chance of failure than overseeding and then having the need to cut back. That's my opinion. If you vary from me, let me know in the comments. But that's definitely how I feel. I am definitely on the let's overplant range. And I know I've seen it out there. I've seen lots of different ones that go with that overseeding method. GLG agrees. Right on. Yeah, I think it's best just to be safe. In the Garden and Blessing says outdoor birds sometimes eat the new growth before it has a chance to grow. So yeah, sometimes you need to cover it with some of the birds. I do get birds here that do that as well. But a lot of times that's why they say it's, you know, best if you can have like a nice greenhouse or have a nice space in your house where you can grow them to start. It's a good thing to do sometimes. I actually did like a little propagation of some basil, and it was looking fantastic when it was in the window. And it was in just some water. I did a hydroponic one where I cut it off and put it in the water until some good roots grow, and it had a ton of good roots. But this was an older basil, so I've never tried to do it off of a basil that's this old. It actually overwintered it, which basil can do. It's just much harder. It's much harder to do with basil because it is not supposed to be a perennial. But basil can do that. And it can kind of reseed itself to grow again. But yeah, I really say, if you're going to do cuttings, I'm going to talk about cuttings, I think, more on another live stream here later. But this particular cuttings I did look like they're going to fail. It's already looking pretty weak. I'm leaving it in there for now. Same kind of thing where I'm going to give it a couple of weeks to see if it does anything. If not, I'll just start it again from seed, or I'll, take it off the other basils that I got growing now and try and do some cuttings like that. Because I do that every year. Well, I grow a lot of basil from seed, and then I'll actually take some of those ones I've grown and I'll propagate off them to create new basils. Because it is essentially, when it comes down to it, easier to propagate them than it is to start them from seed. And basil is one that's pretty darn easy when it comes down to it to do that way, rather than have to start over from seed again. Now, when we're talking reseeding, I think it does also matter from herb to herb. I'd say with the woody herbs, with your sage, with your rosemary, with your lavender, with the thyme, all of those can take a little longer to show up. So I think those ones can go, if you want to be safe, a little more to the 4 weeks, possibly 5 weeks, to see if they show up before you reseed. That said, it's not going to guarantee something's going to show up. Like I said, it depends on your conditions. If you have that in an ideal greenhouse setup with lots of light and perfect temperature and all of that, and you've watered them perfectly, then, hey, glory to you that you've got it right. But it's no guarantee. If it doesn't happen, give it those 4 to 5 weeks, then start over. When it comes to the greener herbs, with the basil, with the cilantro, with the chives, with the lemongrass even, I'd say aim a little bit more towards the shorter range. Because generally, like I said, I'll tend to see my basils, tend to see my dill especially. Dill tends to take off the fastest if it's going to grow. Out of all the ones I've had that I planted this year, the dill popped out the quickest. And I tend to notice that the last couple of years, bar none, especially here in the UK, my dill likes to jump out first. And so if the dill isn't happening, I'll generally go, okay, I'll give that a little bit shorter time because I know it's not going to happen, So with the greener herbs, I think I would aim on the shorter range than the longer range for those. So I'd say you can make that distinction. So with the woody herbs, you can take a little longer. With the greener herbs, I aim a little bit shorter, so that they, especially because you have a pretty big window, which is the nice thing. You can start planting in April here in the UK with these conditions, but if it's outside, it's no guarantee they're going to do anything. you're more likely are going to have to look at waiting till now in May, when the temperatures really are starting to really officially change and getting into that warmer temperature range where it's not going to drop down into any heavy frosts or any troubles so far down that it's going to really cost you the seeds not wanting to grow properly. Obviously there's always going to be snaps that could cost you some seedlings from growing, but I think once you hit May, June, you're in more of that prime range of when it's going to start growing. And once you get as late as August here in the UK especially, you can still keep starting new ones excuse me, and still get things growing. I've done cilantro, I think, actually as late August to early September and still had it grow. And cilantro is one that does like a little bit more heat and a little bit more sun. So keep that in mind. If you're in a warmer temperature, if you're down south in the Florida to Texas range, you can easily plant a little bit earlier with the cilantro and probably get it to grow down there. That said, if it gets too hot down there, it is also more likely to bolt quicker. So you're going to want to stay on top of cutting it back to help keep it going if you want it to grow longer. Otherwise, don't be afraid to just let it grow, cut it all down and use it, and just start a new one. Because especially if it's warm enough, you can get 3, maybe 4 cycles of cilantro coriander to grow in a season. Especially if you are cycling it, which is what I like to do with my coriander or cilantro, is I like to grow, start one pot or a couple pots 1 week, and then wait another 2 weeks, pot a couple more, wait another couple weeks, pot a couple more. So I always have a supply of cilantro or coriander on hand, because that's one of the ones we tend to use the most. We love doing Mexican dishes, and that loves cilantro. So and that and basil is my other big favorite one, just to eat offhand, where I'll just grab a little snack of something and add basil on those snacks all the time. If I just have some of my vegetarian meats, I tend to just grab my herbs straight off the plants and just use those that way. So yeah, looking in that range is what's going to be best for you. You guys have any questions about any of this stuff? Let me know. Good to see Desmond Donders. Good to see Husky and Wolf Dog. Welcome all. Yeah, it's not a huge topic. I wasn't, I obviously there's lots of other things we could talk about planting here, and I will, my plans are to keep doing these shorter, specific topic ones, which I can branch off onto other things if I want to. Of course, it's my live stream around the herbs, but I wanted to talk very specific topics and starting each one of my shows here to really, hammered into these topics to you if you are wanting to grow herbs of any kind. So if that is something you're looking at doing or already do, let me know in the comments how any of these methods have worked for you. Do you like to cycle any of your herbs, or do you just tend to grow a bunch, and if they don't grow, wait a couple weeks in the range that we said, like those 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks before reseeding them? So far it looks like we've got a pretty even vote on when everybody says how long to wait. We've got some people saying 3, 4, and some people saying 5 weeks on how long to wait. So yeah, that is the range. That is the best range. You stay in that area, and you don't want to wait too long. It's either you have 2 choices really. Either you can give it the longer range, and if they're not growing, you just plant another new one. And then once the other one doesn't work, and you wait another couple weeks, then you're cycling. That, or you just, plan on cycling in the first place, which essentially that is, I guess, but you just plan on cycling in the first place, where you grow one and then wait a couple weeks and you do another one. If the first one doesn't take off, you give it those 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, and know you can wait a little bit longer because you already have another one plant that's growing on a different cycle. And then if that doesn't work, then you can just, restart the cycle again with a little bit more. If you cycle your herbs, do you go longer in between, Or do you like giving more of that, just 1 week or 2 week range? Or do you guys go up to more like a month in between herbs or even vegetables that you like to cycle? I know with my herbs that I cycle, I like to give about 2 weeks in between, because once one grows, I can get a couple good weeks of usage out of it before I go, okay, it's going to bolt and I should just cut it all off and call it good and replant. But I tend to find with that cilantro coriander, if I don't use it right away and I let it get pretty big, like let it grow up to about a foot long, I can cut it off, harvest some of it, and get it to regrow a bit before I just have to use it all. In the Garden and Blessings says they wait about a month. Husky and Wolf Dog says they've been growing them, but they all got eaten. And I'll look for the biggest ones in the garden center, all bio. Yeah, sometimes I'll even do that too, where it's like I'll see a sale on a basil, and I'll just go, okay, I'll buy that because we need to use some for a dish anyways, and then I'll just propagate off of that. And that's perfectly fine to do as well. Whatever you need to do to grow. It all works, baby. It's all up to you. It's all good. But yeah, pretty simple. If you haven't seen it yet, or if you're not on my Instagram, I did do a small outdoor garden update out for what's going on outside right now. And I can do a quick rehash here for you. But if you want to look at the more in-depth one, look at the video I posted on Instagram if you haven't seen it yet, and you'll see what all I talked about. And I believe, if you don't know what it is, that's my Instagram in the chat. But I'm gonna do another Instagram post on my indoor herbs, but the outdoor ones right now, the rack I have of just all smaller planted ones, most of those did well. Pretty much everything that's on that rack is growing. The whole top row of them is perennials. So I have perennials of spearmint, chocolate mint, hyssop, and thyme on that top row. I've got a marjoram on the bottom that needs to be repotted because it's been knocked over a couple times, and it may just be in shock because it keeps getting knocked over. Some cats visited from one of the neighbors and knocked over that marjoram once or twice, and so it's gone through a bit of trauma. But it's grown for a couple seasons now, so I wouldn't be surprised if it does keep growing back. But all the other ones are already growing back right now and looking good. And the new ones I've got at the bottom level are starting to grow. I've got a parsley down there that's looking a bit weak. It needs some new seeds, just like the cinnamon basil I talked about that's on the inside. And then the chives I have down there is growing, but kind of just, it looks a little limp right now. We've been getting some rain, so hopefully that will help it out now that we've been getting a bit more rain. Otherwise, a lot of the ones that are in the long planters haven't done much, and most of the cilantro I did out there, yeah, I didn't have high hopes for it when I planted it, but I figured I'd try it, So I already reseeded the one that I have out there because I'm figuring now I'm probably going to get good luck with it growing. Because we're in that range of time where I should start getting coriander to grow. But I generally try and do some inside, some outside, because especially until it gets into the really hot months, I tend to have varying success with the outdoor ones here in the UK, especially because the temperatures can vary so much. And we get wild fluctuations, more than you would think, in the temperatures here. And that really, I think, affects the coriander, cilantro a lot. But I have a couple basils that are doing really good both inside and outside. That's another thing I need to talk about specifically is terrariums and how to set them up, because I've got my Thai basil growing and I need to buy some more Tulsi basil, but both of those types of basil specifically need to be done in a terrarium. If you want them to grow properly, unless you're in some really humid environment already, they have to be in a special terrarium to create an extra level of humidity for them to grow right. So I'm going to probably talk about that in my next live stream to really be like, hey, here's how terrariums work. So let me, in fact, I should write that down before I forget about it. So I know I am going to do terrariums in my next live stream. So we'll talk about that next week. But for now, let's look at the comments. What we got here? Yep, the GLG says, yeah, the garden stores in case of emergency. Yeah, because sometimes the herbs just are growing, but they're not big enough to use yet. Sometimes you just need it, and you're like, gotta go get some. So, yeah, you know, don't be afraid to use those and take advantage of those. Officially, potato is not an herb. Herbs are anything that are the leaves or of a plant. So, potato is, I think, help me out here if I'm wrong, but I believe it is still in the vegetable range. But it's because it's grown underground for one, and herbs don't grow underground. So anything like carrots and potatoes or any of those other vegetables along those lines that actually grow in the earth, onions, are not an herb. Herbs are only things that grow overground and are essentially the leaves of a plant. And that's why when we talk about cilantro coriander, it's all the same plant, because cilantro is the actual leaves of the cilantro coriander plant, and coriander is the seeds that grow if you let it actually go to seed. Yeah. So good to see you, Alejandro. Thanks for the question. Any other questions before we get moving along the road here? I'm not planning on going too long today, but if you got any more questions, do let me know before I say good night. But thank you all for showing up today. I really always appreciate it when you guys are here for these live streams. I know a lot of you guys also watch them after the live, and thank you for that too. That, you know, anytime you're watching this, I love you for it. You guys are wonderful. I really appreciate each and every one of you who watch my videos. Go back and watch my old videos. Oh, here we go. Alejandro also asks, do all sources of vegetation have a sex? Oh, not necessarily. Not all of them do. I mean, when it comes to herbs, they don't there is not a male and female varietal. You don't need one to pollinate them. They just grow from the seed, and you don't necessarily, it doesn't give off something that needs to pollinate to something else. Generally, when you have a male female essentially in a plant, it's something that needs to be pollinated or to have that the male part taken to the female part in order for it to grow. Kind of like a pumpkin, needs the pumpkin flowers to be pollinated in order for it to grow. Or even certain varietals of orchids will do that as well, that they need to be pollinated in order for them to grow. So yeah, it really depends primarily on the ones that need to be pollinated. So generally most herbs are sexless in that sense. They don't need pollination to grow. Yeah. How's the cat doing? The cat's doing great. We got home a little bit late today because the buses are running horribly over here right now. I hate the buses here in the UK. Always have, always will. They're especially bad right now because of all the coronavirus stuff, I guess, but also because they're very short-staffed apparently. And so even though Google will say, oh, this is running, you have to look in a very specific area, like on their Twitter, because their app, they say they have an app, but it only doesn't work. I think it's only on iPhone, not on Android, and I have an Android. But yeah, that's a whole other story. But we were very late to feed the kitty tonight, so we came home and he was like, meow, where's my food? But he's very happy now. He's hanging out with my wife downstairs. So, but he's been fantastic. For those who don't know, Samwise is our second cat, and we got him in October. Wonderful black cat. I'll have to bring him on the live stream sometime to show you him again. I've had him on one video here before, I think, but I'm gonna have to wear a brighter shirt when I do bring him on because he's gonna just blend in to all this black and darkness because he is a black cat with a little bit of white flecks, and that's it. But he's doing great. He's fantastic. He's everything we could hope for in a cat. He's a big-time lap kitty. He loves belly rubs. He's a wonderful calm cat. Ooh, yeah, pineapple mint. I haven't actually ever grown pineapple mint, but I do like it. As long as same as pineapple sage. I have tried pineapple sage, and I like that as well. There's a couple herbs that I need to buy again that I keep just forgetting about when I go to when I get online. I tend to like think of the major ones, and then I forget about those side varietals that I tend to like to get, but don't always grow. So like I need to buy some new lemongrass. I totally have forgotten about getting new lemongrass. I do want to get some other varietals of like that pineapple mint. I wouldn't mind getting a pineapple sage as well. I wouldn't mind trying some other varietals that I haven't tried before. I like lemon balm or lemon verbena, but I don't like them a ton, especially in the teas. I can add them into other things, but there's just something about them for me that it just doesn't hit. They tend to be a little bit dull or a little bit maybe on the sour side even when I have them, I think, you know. And so I really am not a big fan of both the lemon balm and the lemon verbena, especially like I said when it comes to teas. But yeah, it's a good question though. Cymatics, yeah. Ooh, yeah. I thought he was trying to verify what it meant. Sound does work on them. Yeah, it works on all plants. So when if essentially cymatics, I think is that whole concept of if playing music to your plants or saying positive things to your plants, does it affect them? And it's kind of like the studies that I've seen on water and how it affects water crystals. But I have seen things even like on Mythbusters back in the day. They showed a thing that playing loud music to your plants does affect them, and it does have a positive effect on them. So yeah, that does affect your plants. And the funny thing that they showed out though I think is that just extra vibrations I think worked for them because they on Mythbusters they did it with classical music and like heavy metal music, and the heavy metal plants actually grew better. So I think it was more just to the actual overall volume and the mass of vibrations that got put into the plants that helped. Obviously, there's going to have to be, GLG is backing me up on this. Yeah, it's the mass of vibrations, and that's why I think the louder music did better because of the fact that there's just much more vibrations in that music than there is in the classical. So, yeah, it does affect the plants. Good to see Rex George in the house as well. How you doing, sir? Desmond agrees with me about the bus times. Yeah, I'm like at the point now where I'm like going, I know there's less trains to if I want to get up to like Guilford or where I'm going to that's nearby, but I'm these days happier just to walk or take the train than go, oh, there's like a couple buses that I can take instead, because more often than not lately, like today, when we went to leave, I didn't see anything. Google Maps does not tell you when a bus has been canceled. You have to go to a very specific area. So by the time I got on Twitter, of all places, to find out that some buses have been canceled, we had already missed this one bus and been waiting 25 minutes for it. And then the next bus was 8 minutes late and we caught that. On the way back, I got on their app and they had canceled 3 buses in a row. And before our one bus finally showed up. So we essentially had to wait an hour for a bus. Yeah. By that time, it's like going, I might as well have just taken the train. It's like, but once you've already paid for the bus ticket, you don't want to have to pay for a train ticket as well. It's that old problem. So, yeah. All right. So that's my show. Woo! If you haven't seen it yet, please go watch my latest salt videos. I got the one right now about the history of salt in China that's out. I got the just how good or bad is salt for you video. If you haven't seen either one of those, please go check them out. I've got a new salt video coming out next week about the history of salt in Africa and Egypt. So that's coming out next week. And then following that, we're going to be talking terrariums, amongst other things, on my next live stream. And then, because I said I have to talk about terrariums, so we're talking about terrariums next live stream. And then, yeah, I've got a ton more salt videos coming out. So the next one coming out this next week is the Africa one. The 1 week after that is going to be over Europe. Specifically talking about the Roman Empire, talking about the Venice salt trade and the northern shift of the salt trade to the north in general. So that's going to be more one after that. Then we're going to be talking France and salt. And then we're going to get over after that to North America and salt. So yeah, we're covering the whole world and the history of salt in the world. But it's such a huge topic, I'm busting into a whole bunch of videos. And then for those who will end up catching this channel like 6 months down the line, they can just watch my whole playlist of all my salt videos. And then we're going to cover pepper that way too. So that's going to probably be most of the rest of this year. We're going to be like a whole bunch of salt and pepper. I think I'm going to sneak in a couple videos on the benefits of several different teas as well. We're going to also be talking the benefits of salt. But I think I want to go back and catch the benefits of cinnamon, or specifically benefits of cinnamon tea. And there's a couple other teas that people wanted me to cover as well that I think I'm going to cover too. So we're going to get those later this year. But I've got a bunch of work coming up later in this June, July. That I'm going to be doing a immersive theater piece. So I'm trying to get as many videos cut and edited and finished now so I can just keep those coming out while I'm busy with that. So yeah, we're going to keep this thing going. We're not stopping. It's all me though, by the way, so that's why I'm releasing only one official video every 2 weeks and doing a live stream in between, because that's all I have time for. If I had time for more, I would release at least one video every week and give you guys that, you know, high quality edited videos that I do even faster. But yeah, the benefits videos, GLG, are the ones that I tend to get the highest views on. But I love doing the history ones too, so I always intersperse doing history and mythology videos as well, because people always say they love them. I just don't get nearly as many views on them as I do on the benefits videos. So yeah, that's definitely something I will always continue to do, is the history videos. And maybe it might confuse me on my growth from as far as YouTube's perspective, but it's all herbs, it's all spices, so that's all the same. All right, so yeah, that's my show. Thanks for all the great comments. Yeah, you're lucky salt's so cheap now. If you've been watching the history videos, you'll find out that it wasn't always that cheap, and it's less of a trouble now than it was in the past too. There's wars that have been fought over salt. So yeah, it's really fun covering all that stuff. Rex George says herbs and magic spells. Yeah, tons of stuff on magic spells and herbs too. I love always covering that in the mythology videos. And so every time I say a mythology video, I also cover the magic usually when it comes to that, because there's lots of magic lore when it comes to herbs. All right, I'm going to get going. I'm going to go get some dinner. You guys have a great night. Have fun reseeding those herbs, but hopefully you don't have to and they grow in the first place. All right, you guys take care. Love you all. Let me find my button so I don't have to sit here and fumble around when I cut this live stream off. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here. We love you. Please be kind. Take care of each other. Grow those herbs.